Being an Autónomo in Spain is challenging, and it looks like it's about to get even more challenging because the government has just laid out a proposal to increase social security quotas for self-employed Spanish workers starting in 2026 up until 2028. And so in this video, I'm going to essentially share with you what the new self-employed social security fees, the monthly cuotas, will be from 2026 up to 2028. Talk a bit about what this means and what you might do about it as well if you are self-employed or thinking about being self-employed in Spain. Let's get right into it. So a bit of context before we get into the details. Now, in Spain, if you're self-employed or an autónomo, you probably have heard the Spanish phrase cuota autónomo or cuota de autónomo, which is essentially the amount that self-employed workers will pay to the Spanish social security every month. And it essentially contributes towards the pension system and gives them the right to a pension in the future. It gives them access to the public healthcare system and other social security benefits akin to those of an employee. Now, the difference here between self-employed workers and employees is that employees essentially contribute towards social security from their salary, but their employer is also contributing a good chunk as well every month. The employer, therefore, is contributing more towards social security than the employee is. In the case of autónomos, though, there essentially is no employer in the equation, so the autónomo takes on the entire burden of social security themselves and makes those contributions from their net income towards the social security system. And you are going to see in just a second how much those quotas are, but I think it's worth saying as well that autónomos, based on their income in a particular month or what they expect to make for the year, can change between different quotas, different monthly payments, based on what they expect to make, and they can do so up to 6 times per year. So with that said, I'm going to go over to the internet and walk you through what the current quota system looks like, looking at some info that is available on infoautonomos.com. All right, what you can see on the screen now is the current system. You can essentially see there's 15 brackets or tramos, as they're called in Spanish here. And what you've got here is you can see what's known as the base de cotización mínima, which is essentially the minimum amount of income that your social security contribution will be calculated on. So for example, if we take the third bracket here, if you earn between 900 and 1,166 euros 70 cents per month, the minimum amount of social security that you'll pay is 267 euros because the minimum calculation for that is 849 euros. Now, there are autonomos that want to contribute more towards the social security system so that they can have a greater pension in the future. And so what they can essentially do is within that bracket choose the upper limit as well for the calculation of their social security contribution. So if they fall in that bracket, they might not be at the top, but maybe they want to contribute more towards social security. So the maximum contribution they could make is 366 euros per month, which is calculated on the upper limit, which is 1,166 euros and 70 cents. So for this comparison, we're going to focus on the minimums essentially. So if we look, the minimum social security quota that you would pay as an autónomo, if you earn less than 670 euros per month, is 205 euros per month. And at the top end, if you're earning 6,000 euros or more, the minimum social security quota you would pay is 605 euros per month. You can see, obviously, as you earn more, your minimum social security quota increases. But interestingly, as you go up as well, the percentage of your income that social security quota takes up actually decreases. So that 205 euros of the 670, for example, that would be around 30%, a little bit less probably. Whereas 605 euros as a percentage of 6,000 is only about 10%. So that's what it looks like in 2025. What does it look like in 2026? So still on Info Autónomo. So we've got those same brackets again, but you can see that we've got increases essentially across all of the brackets. And you can see that as we go across 26, 27, and 28, is also increasing. So to call out a couple of specific examples, if we look at the lowest bracket, so the up to 670 euros, in 2025, you'll be paying 205 euros per month, minimum of social security. In 2026, that would go up to 217 euros per month. So that would be an increase of 12 euros. It's a 6% increase as well, I should say. By 2028 versus 2025, you'll essentially be paying 47 euros more per month of social security and be paying 252 euros per month. And 252 euros as a percentage of 670 is 37%. So 37% of your net income would be going to social security. Now, there's a lot of brackets in the middle here, so I've tried to pick one which is perhaps in line or close to what might be the average Spanish income. So we take the bracket here of 1,850 to 2,030 euros. In 2025, you're going to be paying 380 euros per month. And in 2026, it's going to go up to 403 euros per month. So that's a 23 euro increase, also 6%. And by 2028, you'll be paying 468 euros per month, which is 88 euros per month more compared to 2025. And in 2028, that's going to represent around 23 to 25% of your income, depending on whether you're at the bottom or the top of the bracket. And last but not least, let's take a look at the highest bracket there. So currently, as I say, 6,000 euros per month or more. You'd be paying 605 euros per month in 2025. That's going to go up to 796 euros in 2026. And by the time you get to 2028, you'll be paying 1,209 euros per month of Social Security, which is 604 euros per month more than what you'd be paying in 2025. And that would represent about 20% of your income. So as you might expect, this hasn't really been well received by Autónomos or by the Association of Self-Employed Workers in Spain, the Asociación de Trabajadores Autónomos. But at the same time, this isn't necessarily anything new because the Autónomo quota system was already changed about 3 years ago, and that led essentially to the system that we have today. And it also resulted in some changes to the Tarifa Plana, which was a good incentive at the time. It was progressive over 3 years, which meant you essentially paid 60 euros for the first year, went up to 90 euros in the second year, and then somewhere in the hundreds in the third year before going on to kind of the standard scheme. Today there is still a Tarifa Plana, and it's 80 euros per month during the first year. It can be extended in certain cases in the second year, but for the majority of people, after that first year, that Tarifa Plana goes away and you move on to the quotas that we've seen on the screen just before. I should mention as well that everything I'm talking about here is purely Social Security. This is before we even get into the income tax question. And the general scale of income tax in Spain runs from 19 to about 47%, depending on which autonomous community you're in. Though I should say as well that Social Security is a deductible expense, so your net income minus your Social Security would be the taxable base that you would pay income tax on in Spain. And I know what you're thinking if you're a foreigner, you're coming to live in Spain, whether it's for the first time or you haven't been here for the past 5-10 years, or the same applies for Spanish people as well, actually. And unfortunately, the answer is that Autónomos cannot benefit from the Beckham law, the flat 24% tax on Spanish-sourced income with exemptions on the rest of worldwide income. By the way, if you are thinking of moving to Spain, whether it's as an employee, an Autónomo, or even retired on a different visa category, then be sure to check out my income tax estimate calculator, which I'll link in the description. You can play around with all these variables like your income, like if you're an employee or an Autónomo, you can pick which region of Spain you'd be living in, and the calculator that's been built with the help and insight of an expert will give you an estimate of what you might expect to pay in income tax whilst living in Spain. So where does that leave people who are entrepreneurs or want to start a business or be freelance in Spain? From my perspective, if Spain is your base, the only other option I really see is setting up a company, because there are some tax advantages that come with incorporating a legal entity in Spain. Granted, you'll need some capital up front. It can be more costly and more tedious to maintain from an administrative perspective. But I'd say it does give some advantages versus being self-employed. And I've got a video coming up on this very soon, so do keep an eye out for that, where we talk about setting up a company in Spain in more detail. Besides that, there are other European countries that offer a similar lifestyle, similar quality of life to Spain, and at the same time have slightly more attractive social security and tax regimes for self-employed people. In Portugal, Social Security is calculated on 70% of your income and is typically at 21%. So you're very unlikely to pay above 20% in Portugal. There's also some beneficial tax regimes as well, where you can pay up to 35% as a freelancer in Portugal. Cyprus, another option I've talked about, you'll pay only about 17.5% in Cyprus. You can also incorporate a company and set up under the non-dom regime to optimize your structure tax efficiently if you meet certain criteria. Italy, which was a really interesting discovery as I was researching for these other options, have a couple of schemes where you can pay between 5 to 15% for the first 5 years on your income as a freelancer, up to 85,000 euros, if I'm not mistaken. This is an option that's potentially overlooked by a lot of people that could be quite attractive in certain cases. And then I've also mentioned and discussed countries in Eastern Europe in other videos as well, such as Bulgaria, which is very tax efficient. Romania has a very attractive micro-entrepreneur regime. Georgia has only a territorial tax system and many ways to optimize your taxes there. And so whilst I understand the pull towards Spain, because I'm here myself and I know how great life can be here, don't necessarily restrict yourself just to Spain. Do consider and give some thought to some of these other countries as well, where they have attractive schemes. Because the reality is, as great as it is to live in Spain, it is a very challenging environment to be in as an entrepreneur, a self-employed person, or a freelancer. There you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I thought I'd get this one out relatively quick since it is quite big news related to self-employed and freelance people in Spain. Leave a comment and let me know if you're a freelancer or a self-employed person in Spain and you're going to be affected by this. I'd be interested to hear what your take on the matter is. And if you like this video and you want to see more about taxes or doing business in Spain, then be sure to check out these two videos here. So next time, I'll see you on the next one, and let's get this money.